With just 2 games left on the Bulls' schedule, one of which is tonight against the Dallas Mavericks, who they are tied with in the overall NBA standings with the same record, and with the Bulls locked into the 10 seed no matter if they win or lose, it begs the question, should the Bulls just throw these last 2 games and take an L, resting their best players, giving their younger guys some run, and actually doubling their chances to keep their pick in this upcoming draft, should they not be able to play their way into the playoffs? Well, that's what we'll be talking about in this video. So what's going on, everyone? You're listening to Bulls Central here. Hope you're all doing well. Now, I'm sure you guys have heard of the website Tankathon. It's updated with the standings every day, and it gives you the ability to simulate the NBA draft lottery based on the current standings with the current odds for each respective team. And I kid you not, the very first time I pushed the simulator, the first time I visited the site this season anyway, because I did plenty of times the years where the Bulls actually were tanking, but for the first time this season, I decided to head over there really just to look at the Bulls' current odds with these last 2 games remaining, and wouldn't you know it, the Bulls jumped up 9 spots to land the number 1 pick in the draft, which of course would mean the Bulls are getting Victor Wembanyama, as he is the consensus number 1 pick in this upcoming draft. Now, you guys know me. I normally never advocate for tanking, even in the rebuilding years. I think there is something to be said about establishing a winning mentality and a winning culture rather than just remaining in a perpetual state of losing year after year, especially when the NBA has a draft lottery system. It's not like the NFL or the MLB, where if you finish with the worst record, you get the number 1 pick, or with the second worst record, the number 2 pick, and so on. No, you very well could get screwed even if you lose all season and have a team that finished with a much better record jump you in the lottery standings. As you saw in the year in which everyone was tanking for Zion and Ja Morant, including the Bulls, and none of the 4 worst teams in the league landed those top 2 picks. No, that went to the New Orleans Pelicans and the Memphis Grizzlies. So because of all of this, I never advocate for losing games. However, in this particular instance for the Bulls, only 2 games left. They're getting the 10 seed no matter what. Yeah, they need to lose these last 2 games, and I'll explain why. First of all, tonight's game against the Mavericks in Dallas, which looks like the Bulls are going to be more or less throwing the game anyway. The team has, at the time of this recording, listed DeMar and Zach as questionable, and they did say they would be looking into resting all 3 of DeMar, Zach, and Vucevic in this game. So it's possible by the time you're watching this, they have been ruled out for the game. And with the Mavs fighting for their play-in lives with a half game back of the 10 seed in the West behind the Oklahoma City Thunder, to somehow salvage their disaster of a season, especially after trading for Kyrie Irving and giving up assets to do so, you know they're going to be doing everything in their power to win at all costs. And if the Bulls do in fact sit their big 3, yeah, not a chance the Mavs lose this game. Although the Mavs have kind of been like the Bulls this season and have lost some very bad games against shorthanded teams and have struggled to maintain an identity all season long, so you never know. Maybe a Patrick Williams and Coby White-led Bulls team would actually beat the Mavericks, but barring any crazy circumstance, the Bulls are likely losing this game against the Mavs. Again, means nothing in the standings for the Bulls. They're going to be getting the 10 seed regardless. Then, the final game of the season. The Bulls play the worst team in the NBA, a team that has lost 11 straight games, has only won 16 games all season, and has secured the worst record in the league, the Detroit Pistons. Now, Billy Donovan did say they would likely play Zach, DeMar, and Vooch in that game, more so just for getting them some rhythm and some run before the playing game on the 12th, even if it's in limited minutes or staggered in the rotation, which I get it. You don't want your 3 main guys resting the final 2 games and being cold going into a win-or-go-home playing game. But at the same time, the Bulls winning that last game at home in Detroit, a seemingly insignificant game, could really come back to bite them, and here's why. Let's say for a moment the Bulls lose the game to the Mavericks tonight, which again is likely because the Bulls are going to be resting players, while the Mavs are going to be trying their best to win a game to secure that last play-in spot. With the 10th worst record in the NBA, which, by the way, is the lowest the Bulls could fall because the Jazz, who have the 9th worst record in the NBA, are 2 games below the Bulls, and the Bulls own the tiebreaker over them. If the Bulls lose the game to the Mavs, that puts them squarely in 10th, which gives them better odds than if they were tied, which would give the Bulls a 13.9% chance of landing in the top 4 and even a 3% chance of landing the number 1 pick. As opposed to right now, with both being tied, the Bulls would actually have an 11.7% chance of securing a top 4 pick and a 2.5% chance of the number 1 pick, which is pretty significant, I know, but here's the real kicker. Say the Bulls win these last 2 games and they actually jump the Mavericks and the Thunder in the standings, which is very possible if they win these final 2 games. The Bulls would then have a 7.2% chance of landing in the top 4 and only a 1.5% chance of that number 1 pick, effectively cutting their odds of keeping their pick in half. Again, the odds are already low when you're only talking about 13.9%, but going from 13.9% to 7.2% is a pretty big difference when you're talking about two meaningless games for the Bulls that won't have any impact on their seeding for the play-in. The same applies for their small chances with the number 1 pick going from 3% to 1.5% by going from the 10th worst team in the league to the 12th worst team in the NBA. Now, obviously, the downside here is the chances of the Bulls actually being able to keep their pick regardless of whether they finish with the 10th worst record or the 12th worst record is still so small. Like, you're most likely going to be handing that pick over to Orlando if you get knocked out of the play-in. Between an 86% to 93% chance you're shipping that pick over to Orlando regardless of where you finish. And if you're the Bulls, to kind of save face with the Vucevic trade after having already shipped them one lottery pick, which netted them Franz Wagner, sending them the 12th pick instead of the 10th pick might seem a little bit more palatable. Of course, if the Bulls do in fact pull off the unthinkable and being that first 10 seed to actually play into the playoffs, that pick that they'll send to Magic would no longer become a lottery pick. It'll be the 15th pick if I'm not mistaken, given they would finish with the worst record among all playoff teams. But in any event, given what we know of this front office, I wouldn't be shocked if they try and win these last 2 games, knowing they're likely losing that pick anyway. Why try to make it a worse lottery pick for the Magic as much as possible to justify the Vucevic trade? But really, if we're being practical here and we're going into it with the mindset that the Bulls are most likely going to be losing that pick anyway, why not lose those last 2 games? When your positioning in the play-in is already set in stone and effectively doubling your odds, albeit doubling odds at a very low rate, and hopefully getting incredibly lucky with a near 14% chance of landing in the top 4 and keeping your pick, and taking away something positive in an otherwise lost season. Just my thoughts though. I would love to hear what you guys think. Would you rather see the Bulls lose these final 2 games to give them just slightly better odds of keeping their pick? Let me know in the comments. Don't forget to tune into the game tonight against the Mavs, although I wouldn't blame you if you didn't, especially if the Bulls are going to be resting their starters. But as always, guys, be sure to subscribe, and I'll see you in the next one.